Hello and good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, which is actually the same webinar that we held for about a month ago. That was in Norwegian. So we will then have this webinar today about employees that are working or staying in Norway. So the webinar is about membership of the national insurance scheme, and also then another occupational pensions and the other employee benefits insurances that you have for your employees. This meeting will be recorded, and it's possible to put questions in the chat, of course. And after the presentations is held, it's also possible to raise your hand and ask questions directly. Okay, then we start this webinar. Membership of the national insurance scheme. Remember that the main rule is that if you are working in Norway, you are compulsory member of the national insurance scheme. The national insurance scheme is the name that they said had given this scheme. In the Norwegian language, it's called Folketrygden, and it's administered by NAV. So remember the main rule that you are compulsory member of the national insurance, that if you are working in Norway. It's also the same rule if you have a residence in Norway. So either if you are working in Norway or have a residence in Norway, you are a compulsory member in the national insurance schemes. So this membership is not determined by whether you are a Norwegian citizen or registered in the national population registration or pay tax. Very many think that if you are paying tax to Norway, you're always a member, and even if you don't pay tax, you might be a member of the Norwegian national insurance scheme. So WTV recommend that employers is to follow this main rule. We have seen some situations where either the employee or the employer wants to do some different than the main rule. But our recommendation is that you follow this main rule. Then it's regulated both by the Norwegian legislations and also the legislations that's coordinated within EU. So where you arrive from might have an impact. So EU and EEA countries, that's land that Norway have an agreement with. That's and one special things. So if you are a citizen in an EU or EEA country, you are automatically and have a compulsory membership from your first day you work here or you stay in Norway. But your stay in Norway must be for at least 12 months. So if the stay is less than 12 months, you are, as a main rule then, a member from your homeland. So, but if your stay is at least 12 months, you are automatically and compulsory member of the Norwegian national insurance. So, but if you work for an employer outside Norway, you will not be a member of the national insurance if your work lasts under 24 months. But if but I remember again, the main rule is that if you work in Norway, you are a compulsory member, but your stay and your work has to be for at least 24 months. If it's less, and then again, then you will be a part of your homeland agreements. So resident or just an employee in Norway. So if you are a resident, the main rule is again that you are a member of this national insurance. compulsory membership from the day of entry into Norway. If your stay is planned to be less than 12 months, you will not be member of this regime. So that's if you are a resident in Norway. If you are an employee and if you work in Norway, and remember, this webinar is if you are either staying in Norway, have a residence in Norway, or work in Norway. If your work is outside Norway, this is not a part of this webinar. If you are not working or staying in Norway, you are normally a member of your homeland's insurance contracts and social security system. So, but if you are working in Norway, your membership is again compulsory, even if you do not live in Norway. So this is also for employees on the Norwegian continental shelf, or if you are a citizen of EEA and work on a Norwegian vessel. So that's the same rules that goes for those people. As mentioned, there's a difference. If you have a Norwegian employer, then you are a member day one when you work here. Or if your employer is outside Norway, not a member, if the work is under 24 months. But you have to work and do your work in Norway or at the Norwegian continental shelf or a Norwegian vessel. If you have employees sent to Norway from abroad, there are, of course, some exceptions possible. But remember again, the main rule is that the membership is compulsory, so that's the main rule, but it is possible to have exceptions. And if you come from EU and EEA, you have to have these documentations within this union, a scheme called A1. Then you are accepted from the Norwegian National Insurance, and if you are accepted from that, you are not a part of Norwegian's insurance contracts. From other countries with a social security agreement with Norway, you need documentations from your home country social security that you are a part of this social security, and you will not then be a part of the Norwegian social security. For employees from USA and Canada are not a part of the pension part of the Norwegian National Insurance, but they are compulsory part of the medical part. And as we will see later, that will also, of course, be some mandatory insurance contracts that you need to have in Norway if they are arriving from USA, Canada. So, but again, I must say, remember the main rule. If the stay, if you are sent to Norway from abroad, as you work for a foreign employer, but you work in Norway, you are a compulsory member of the Norwegian National Insurance if your work is set up to be at least 24 months. So, membership in national insurance or not, what about these insurance contracts that you have as an employer for your employees? In that means occupational pensions and other employee benefits insurances. So membership in pensions and other employee benefits insurers employed in a Norwegian company. So that's the first thing. If you are employed in a Norwegian company, and of course, your work is in Norway, you are a compulsory member of the national insurance scheme. And remember these exceptions for staying under 12 months. You must be a member in the Norwegian occupational pension scheme, and it's no exceptions. We often receive some questions from employer that maybe the employee wants to continue with this membership from his homeland, and not be a part of the Norwegian occupational pension scheme. That's not possible if you are staying here and working here for over 1 year. You must be a member of the Norwegian occupational pension scheme, and there is no exceptions. And remember, we have a new system now that all administrations for pension contracts will be automatically done by the A-scheme. So if you are paying salary to the employee, they pay tax, for instance, in Norway, then it will be automatically be a member of the Norwegian occupational pension scheme. Not all the insurance companies are fully integrated with its system yet, but it will be, and maybe that will be mandatory for all Norwegian employers, that you are going to follow this new administration system through this public A-scheme, avmeldingen in Norwegian. And this is also, of course, if you have to have the Norwegian pension scheme, that will also apply to other employee benefits insurances. For instance, accident, group life, and of course, this mandatory occupational injury insurance that we have by law in Norway, also called workers' compensation. And that is also a mandatory insurance for all Norwegian employers. So membership in pensions and other employee benefits insurances sent from an employer outside Norway. Remember, you have to work in Norway if it is compulsory membership. And if you are from an employer outside Norway, your stay has to be at least 24 months. And what then about pensions and insurances? First, for the pension side, if there is no employer placed inside Norway, it's very difficult to even establish a pension contract. Pension providers in Norway demand a registration in Norway, so it is not an employer in Norway. It's very difficult, and then it is not possible then to establish an ordinary Norwegian contract because there is no entity in Norway. So then, what shall you then do for the pension side? I would say try to continue the pension contract from the homeland according to local legislation. And if the stay is planned to be over 24 months, consider to establish a Norwegian entity. I think that is very recommended. So all these things goes the right way. For employee benefits insurances, other employee benefits, lump sum benefits, if it's compulsory to pay social security tax, arbeidsgiveravgift in Norwegian, it must be a place an occupational injury insurance called also workers' comp. And that is compulsory, even though the employee doesn't pay tax. But remember, if you are working in Norway, this will be compulsory. And that insurance, the occupational injury insurance, is compulsory even though if the stay is under 24 months. So you had to have that insurance. And that's all the slides that I do have. So I haven't seen any questions or someone raised their hands. And I don't see any questions in the chat. We received a question here. How does all of this apply to interns? I'm not sure what you mean about that, also coming from other countries. As I said, if you are working in Norway, you have a sister company in another company, and a person from that company comes in and work in Norway. They will not be employed in the Norwegian entity. Then it is so. Yeah, working as students as uh, if it is a student, yeah, that has nothing to do with it. If you are working in Norway, the main rule is that I said that it is that you are compulsory member of the Norwegian National Insurance. But if you have a Norwegian employer, then you will be a part of this if your stay in Norway will be over 24 months. If you will be actually employed in the Norwegian entity, it's compulsory from the first day if the work is at least 1 year. So when I see here in the chat working as a student, it seems like this is for a shorter period than 1 year. Then it's possible that every insurance then should be done in the homeland country, not in Norway. I haven't seen any more questions, so we don't need to use all these 30 minutes. We have used almost 20, but that's fine. So another question here. Are you a member of the national insurance scheme once you are paying taxes via payroll? Yes, of course, if you are paying taxes. But as I said on one of the first slides, it's not, the tax is actually not what is the rule to be a member of the national insurance. It's either if you work in Norway or have a residence in Norway. So it's possible to work in Norway and don't pay tax to Norway because your residence is in another country. But if you work in Norway, it's compulsory to be a part of the Norwegian national insurance. And that's, of course, if you work for a Norwegian employer and your work is actually done in Norway. So tax is not a part of it, actually. But of course, if you pay tax, then you are staying in Norway and working in Norway. You are a member of the Norwegian national insurance. And it's, of course, through the payroll system. And that's the A-scheme, avmelding på norsk, that regulates this. So to be a part of the A-scheme, that's the only thing it's possible to both pay salary and taxes. And then you are part of the national insurance and also will be a part of the occupational pension and insurance contracts that you as an employer have. It seems so that There are no more questions. I will just wait 1 minute. So another follow-up on the last question, the changes to pensions you mentioned. Is there anything we need to do on an employer if we already have pension plan in place in Norway? There are no changes in pension, but again, if you are work or stay in Norway and work for a Norwegian employer, it's compulsory to also be a part of the employee paid pension contract. So then this employee will then be a part of also the pension plan that you have in place in Norway. So it's nothing else you need to do. Where do you check all of this? Now, of course, you can check it through the A-scheme. That's Skatteetaten in Norwegian. You have to, of course, have a social security number in Norway. The employee has to have that. It sometimes starts with a so-called D number in the start, and then you will have an ordinary social security number in Norway. And then you can check, and your payroll department can check it through the A-scheme that this employee is a part of this, has come into this system. This will actually regulates all of this. It's not a blanket or something that you have to fill in to be a part of Norwegian National Insurance. No, it's only that you are paying salary to the employee, and also if you're paying taxes, then the employee has to be in this A-scheme through Skatteetaten. The Norwegian tax authority, that means. So there is where you can check it, and your payroll department should have access to these systems and to check all of this. So a question that the Norwegian company for the employee went bankrupt. Are there any actions that I should do about my pension? Check your pension. Of course, you can check it with the pension provider. It should be an account there. And always also when bankrupts, every single premium paid from the employer to the employee is the employee's account. So it's not a part of the bankruptcy. This is the employee's money, and you can check it either by the pension provider, and we also have, can write down a website where you can find all your Norwegian pension contracts through the private system. So that's the website that you can use to find whether if and how big your account is for your pension. And this is secured when bankruptcy. So everything that's paid in is the employee's money. So now it seems that the questions have stopped. No, another one. What about this external provider? Should I contact them? No, you can check this pension, and they will always be there. These pensions assets, and will be paid out to you when possible. It is to pay it out at the earliest age of 62. So this is your money, and you can follow it by the pension provider. And this pension provider is, of course, a Norwegian one. If you have worked in Norway, it is a Norwegian provider. And nowadays we have only 5 for private pension schemes, and also for public sector there are a few more. So check it out, and you can see that on the website that I mentioned in the chat here, norskpensjon.no. So this will stay in this Norwegian pension contract until you can take it out at the earlier age of 62. Uh, For these defined contributions plans, these are actually pensions funds, and it exists of equities and bonds. So of course they will vary with the market. Of course, they are not secured by any way. It can be a surplus below zero, but it's normally a good surplus on these funds. But of course, if you are looking into the national insurance, that is of course secured by the Norwegian state. So we haven't seen if the insurance company goes bankruptcy. That has nothing to do with this, because this is placed in a pension fund. So the pension funds is outside the insurance company. Now I don't think that is a part of what you should consider. Okay. Then it's just time to thank you for participating in this webinar. And of course, this will be also recorded, so it's possible to see it later. That will be through YouTube. So thank you for this meeting, and welcome back. And I wish you also a very good summer holiday. Thank you and goodbye.